Hi everybody, thanks for tuning in to part 2 of our trap preparation process. Preparing traps for the trap line takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, but I think that every minute that you spend in this process is well invested into your fall and winter season. Today is a day where we're going to do something called dyeing traps. We're going to actually color the traps. It does a couple things for your traps. It camouflages it depending upon the set. A lot of times these traps are going to be buried, and hopefully the animal that we're seeking, our target animal, isn't going to see that trap, whether it's neon green or dark brown. But what this also does is it really protects the investment, the money that you have into this trap, because it helps to protect it from further rusting. Now in part 1 of this process, if you saw that video clip, we talked about actually getting a light film of rust on your trap, and what that does is it pits your metal so that this dye can kind of adhere to that steel. So when we talk about rusting our traps, we want a fine film of rust, but you also don't want the opposite. We don't want extreme rust, because then your trap is deteriorating, and we obviously don't want that. Today, this video segment is going to focus on leg hold traps. On my particular trap line, this is going to be my fox traps and my coyote traps, and some raccoon traps. And what I do for my upland traps is different than what I do for my water traps. And we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But again, we're going to really focus today on leg hold traps for an upland setting. For this process, I use a product called Logwood Trap Dye. This is a powder, and you simply put this into boiling water and you set your traps in there and you let it simmer. And the directions are right on the bag. It's fairly easy to do, and it says the final statement: let traps simmer in hot water just below the boiling point for approximately 1 hour. Now, I'll admit in this process sometimes I get a little bit rushed and a little bit antsy, and sometimes my traps don't sit in that water for a full hour. But I've had really good success with this product. With trapping and with any sport that we get into, it's just like anything. You could ask 10 people their opinion and you might get 10 different answers, and each of those 10 answers might work for the individual that you spoke to. I'm in no way saying today that this is the only way to do things. I'm just simply telling you what I do to prepare for my trap line and what's worked for me in the past. So today, we've got our stove set up, our water's hot. I've actually already added a bag of Logwood Trap Dye. Again, it's a pretty cheap product, and I like to have a couple bags on hand, so I've already added one. I like to have a stir stick handy, nothing fancy, just a stick of wood, and as always, I always recommend safety glasses when doing anything with these boiling water situations. So I'm not sure how that shows up in the video, but our water is a nice dark brown color, and our traps really should come out today looking fairly black in color. These traps are all ready to go. We've prepared them, we've cleaned them, we've boiled them to get last year's wax off. On the traps that I own that have an adjustable pan tension, I have adjusted the pan tension to where I want it. This particular trap is a Minnesota brand 550. It's got the night latch system, and there's virtually little that I need to do to adjust the pan tension to get this particular trap to fire. So the traps, like in this case, cost a little bit more money, but they do save me a lot of time to prepare for my trap line. So if you're like most people and you don't have as much time as you wish you have, it might be a good investment to spend a little bit more money up front on some of these higher quality traps, because they will save you a lot of time in the fall. One thing that I do in this step, once my trap is completely prepared, again, it's completely ready to go. If I'm using a disposable stake, it's on there, it's attached, it's tightened, I've done my pan tension, I've done everything, a good check over. I put a small, in this case this is a small screw, in between the jaws of this trap. And what that does is it opens this up just slightly so the dye can penetrate all parts of the trap. In other words, the jaws of the trap aren't touching. Sometimes what will happen, especially on step 3 of this process, which we'll get to, in another video is the waxing process. And if you don't have a gap between these jaws, a lot of times when we dip this trap in wax, it's going to actually glue itself together, and that can be a real tough situation, especially on opening day when you're trying to get all your sets out and get in and get out. So anyway, this opens up the jaws so that both the dye and the wax can get all around the jaws. The other thing that it does for me personally is this is a visual to me to say that this is a clean trap. When I am working with my traps in the fall and I pull a trap out of my trap basket and I see that this screw in there is in there, that ensures to me that this is a clean trap, that this has not been used. Now, when I use this on my trap line, obviously the screw comes out. I take it out with me, obviously. But then when I pull traps, and I have traps that don't have that screw there, I know that those traps are quote-unquote dirty, and I will keep those separate from the rest of my trapping supplies, because they, you know, they might be contaminated. Maybe they have some foreign odors on them, or whatever the case. So for me, it's a visual to know that this is ready to go, this is all clean, or if that is missing, then I need to reboil and wax. Again, I already said this in part one, but I really like these disposable stakes. They call them disposable, but I use them over and over again. Sometimes in the fall, though, if the ground up here is frozen, we can't always get these out. So, you know, they can stay in the ground, but I get them out if I can. But these are all ready to go. In this process, the nice thing about these stakes is they work as a handle, and I can take them and I can set them right into the water. Now in part one, when we were boiling traps to clean them, I put the stakes and everything right into the water. I like everything going into my trap line to be boiled well before we go through this process. So I'm fairly confident that those pieces are clean, that there aren't any oils on them if they're brand new, for example. So this hanging out today doesn't bother me at all, but I do like to have my trap chain fully submerged in that water. I'm going to just carefully lower these in. Now this pan that I use for this process isn't extremely big. With these 550s, I can usually fit about 5 of those traps under the water. What I don't like is I don't like a trap sitting halfway out of that water. I would rather fully submerge them, let them boil for that 45 minutes to an hour, or simmer I should say, and then take them out and then just put the new batch in. So I'll just keep an eye on that. Depending upon how windy it is, if I'm having trouble keeping that boil, I do have a lid that can go on here. In this pan here is just a pan that I used this morning. I had a few new disposable stakes that didn't get boiled in round one of our trap preparation process. So I just go ahead and boil everything that's going on to these traps. Again, it's the type of thing where you do what works for you. That's worked well for me. Some people would say that's maybe a waste of time. My rack over here is a drying rack, so when these traps come out of our dyeing solution, I'll hang them up on this rack, and then I can get the next batch in, and then once those have drip dried, I'll take them over to where I store them up until the time we do our waxing process. To the left of the table here is a product that I use on my Conibear traps for my water line. This particular product is a Dakota line trap and snare dip. I've had good success with this in the past. It's a dip that is easier to use. It's less steps than all of the 3 steps that we go through with our upland traps here. It's literally just a dip. You take your clean trap, you dip it in there, hang it up, you let it dry, and it's literally that easy. This particular one is water-based. You mix it, you dilute it with water, and again, I've had good luck with that. There are other products out on the market that you use a petroleum type of fuel to thin it out, and you know, that's been around for a long time, and a lot of people have used it with great success. So today, when these traps are done, again, I'm going to take them out, I'm going to put them on the drying rack, and then we're going to wait for step 3 of our trap preparation process, which is waxing. The thing that I'd really like to stress is that when you get to step 2, that you completely let these traps dry before we go ahead and wax them. Sometimes if you have boiling wax and water gets in there, that water is going to create kind of a pocket, and it's going to splatter, and that can throw boiling wax and be very flammable, be a very hazardous situation, and can burn the person very bad as well. So, hope that you enjoyed step 2 of our trap preparation process here. Hope you join us for step 3, which is waxing. Good luck.